What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Desert Sports and Entertainment Phoenix Suns podcast. I'm Trevor Booth, joined by my friend Bradley Young. Brad, if you want to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, everybody. My name's Brad Young. Huge fan of the Phoenix Suns. Been a fan, oh goodness, since I was like 2 years old. My grandpa took me to games when I was that age, and I think I've been to a game every year since, at least one. Some years it's like 10, some years it's like one only. But yeah, been a fan since the Steve Nash days, and then you had the 3-point guard era with Isaiah Thomas, Goran Dragic, and I think it was Brandon Knight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting time for the Suns. But yeah, super excited to be here. This is my first sports podcast I'm ever doing, so excited.
Yeah, Brad and I go back several years. We played basketball together, had a lot of fun, and now we're sharing some Phoenix Suns conversations. So, with that, let's get into it. Brad, I'm sure you saw the NBA trade deadline week and how it went down for the Suns, specifically with Kevin Durant and reportedly being mentioned in trade talks with the Golden State Warriors. And if you look at what happened and what's come out since then, Kevin Durant was going to be a Warrior if the Warriors did not pull out of that trade. Like that was said and done. And there's some frustration, it seems like, on Kevin's side with not being kept in the loop. He's talked about it in the media room, and he said it's the business of things. It's kind of the way it is. But what were your thoughts on the trade deadline for the Suns and how it went down?
Yeah, I thought it was unfortunate, to be honest, just the way things played out. Contrary to popular opinion on the Suns fan base, I don't believe Nurkic was the problem at all. Yeah, he had foul trouble issues. I think that was the main frustration I have with him. But otherwise, I thought he was a great rim protector. I mean, I went to the game against the Thunder towards the end of the season last year, and he had a rebound count of up into the 30s, something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And he's a great rim protector. Yeah, he's a little bit slow for the offense, but our rim protection hasn't improved ever since he hasn't been playing. I mean, Nick Richards is great, but he was a backup on the Hornets for a reason. I still think he's a great player, and I think he does fit into the style of offense. But do I think he's the full answer? No, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the price you pay when you have three guys on max deals, especially with this new CBA. And when they made that trade for Bradley Beal, Ishbia, he knew about that, and it kind of seems like he's the general manager, whereas like Jones is just kind of like along for the ride, and takes the hit of things. So yeah, trying to stay on the topic of the question. I think it was kind of the reason why Durant was put in these trade rumors or even in trade talks, I'd say, is Suns were just scrambling last second because they wanted to get something done, and they probably weren't thinking. I mean, maybe a team offered them like, "Hey, what about Durant?" And they're like, "Oh, well, let's listen to offers," and they got leaked.
Mm-hmm.
That deal with the Warriors when I heard that, I was like, why would you do that? Like, why would you? The point of having Butler on this team is to have Durant. You need Durant at the same time, and then kind of reflecting on it, I thought that would have been a good trade for them. Because everybody said like, well, you'd have to be locked into Kuminga. Okay. Like Kuminga is going to be a great player. He's only been in the league, I think, like 5 years, something like that. And he's young. Yeah. He's a great defender. He can fit into most offenses. He's not going to be your primary guy. And the Suns play better when they don't have a primary guy. Yeah, KD puts up stats, but we've seen recently that the ball's stagnant, unfortunately, with him.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very stagnant. And when they had a victory against the Jazz, like Durant was sitting, he wasn't playing. and the ball just moved around. I'm not saying he's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying the ball. I think the team has an issue where they expect KD just to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
They just think he can pull something, out and pull some magic.
Yeah.
Hit a shot over 3 people, and then it's good. Like nobody else has to do anything. So there has to be a lot of reflection of after the trade deadline about what this team's identity is, and what type. Do they want to be a pass first team? Do they just want to be a ISO team? And they can continue being an ISO team, and they're going to get the same results, turnover after turnover. I mean, that turnover that Durant threw to Tyus Jones at the end of the Grizzlies game was just kind of summed it up. It was unfortunate. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. So I don't know. I'll hand it back to you, Trevor.
Yeah, no, I've been around Kevin Durant for some time, and I think going back to his introductory press conference, it's something that I mentioned on Twitter. He never came here with the ideation that he's this all-time great and everything that's going to come to him here in Phoenix is just going to come to him. He's always made it clear that he wants to be a great son, and he said in press conference settings that he wants to get his number retired here in the Ring of Honor. It's a very big decision when you add someone like Kevin Durant to your team. I think a lot has to be right for the star, and it hasn't been made right for Kevin Durant. This roster construction where, like you said, Brad, KD gets a lot of isolation touches in the post. It's got to be guys who are ready to catch and shoot, and then on the defensive end, be able to take some of that defensive pressure off of him. And, more often than not, and you've seen it in the last 2 games just with Ty Washington and Colin Gillespie being out there, those aren't guys who are capable enough to be part of a championship contending team with Kevin Durant. And I think when the Suns made the trade for Bradley Beal, like you said, you thought that, okay, you've got 3 lethal scorers, and then you got a rim protector / finisher and DeAndre Ayton. And I think the Nurkic trade changed a lot of things where it maybe wasn't necessarily the right fit. I agree with you where Nurkic last year, I don't think he was necessarily the problem. I think the whole thing just came down to a fit issue. He didn't play the last month and a half, 2 months that he was here, really. And getting him off the books was something you needed to do. I don't know if you saw, he said in an interview where him and Mike Budenholzer didn't have a relationship. They didn't talk in like 2 months. That's not a good look for your team. So going back to the Kevin Durant thing, I think you nailed it perfectly. Like the Suns were in a situation where, hey, maybe they realized they couldn't get this Jimmy Butler deal done. They're in the second apron. Matt Ishbia has said they want to get out of it by 2027. And you get calls and you listen. Whether or not the deal was close to being done, I don't know necessarily. We don't know. But there has been things that have come out that have led you to believe that. And if you're the Suns in that situation, I'll be completely honest. I felt like since November of last year, this team wasn't good enough to win a championship. You got to get out of that second apron, and you got to do what's best for Kevin Durant, I think. And, in that regard, I think like they've said in some of these ESPN articles, or they've been attributed to, Suns front office people have said they can handle it better. But I don't necessarily disagree with the decision to move on from Durant, just given that, this team is not where it needs to be at all.
No, not at all. And something that just came to my mind is when they made that trade for Kevin Durant back in early 2023, we forget that they had Chris Paul. They had that facilitator. Now which is rare to find in this league, where you have a facilitator who really doesn't turn over the ball that much and can still score on his own in Chris Paul. And Chris Paul held that responsibility of being the distributor. If we look back to, all the teams that KD has been on, this is his first time where he's been called to be the distributor. I mean, Oklahoma City or Seattle / Oklahoma City, his rookie year doesn't really count. And, being the guy, there's not as much expectations for him there. But then you get Westbrook. He's the guy who brings up the ball. He's in charge of the offense, and then Durant plays off ball a lot. Then you go to Golden State. You have a top 10 all-time player in Steph Curry. Okay, he's going to hold the ball most of the time, and you have that Steve Kerr motion offense. Everybody moves all the time. Of course, Durant's not going to have the ball all the time. So his turnovers are going to be dramatically less. Then you go to Brooklyn, and you have Kyrie Irving as the primary ball handler. He's not necessarily a distributor, but he takes a lot of the load off Kevin Durant. And I love Devin Booker. He's just not the type of player necessarily that can fit with Kevin Durant when you don't have a distributor in Chris Paul. So I think losing Chris Paul really set them back. And yeah, unfortunately, you couldn't count on Chris Paul in the playoffs to show up. And people forget that he just always got injured, and people have short memory on that aspect. So Kevin Durant is being asked to do something that he's never done, and I don't necessarily blame him for making some mistakes, because he's in year 17, 18 in the league,
17
and 17, yeah, and he has a completely different role that he hasn't done in 17 years. That's something that I don't think anybody can really adjust to that.
No, definitely. Just with the whole Kevin Durant thing, it's the if he gets moved, let's say like in the summer or something like that, how do you think that affects Devin Booker's long-term with the team? Do you think that's something that could sway him from being here in Phoenix for the rest of his career? Like, he's made it clear that he wants to be in the past.
Yeah, I think it does. Because if you're a player, in my short, very amateur basketball career, you don't want to give up on yourself in the current, no matter what situation you're in. You don't want to feel like you've been given up on. And Devin Booker hasn't necessarily gone through like success to rebuild. He hasn't been a part of like that, in between period that Steph Curry has been in his career. And, everybody's a little different. And the difference between Book and Steph is Steph has won those championships. He won 3, and then they went through a rebuild period. So he kind of had that, like, okay, let's write it out. Let's see what happens. Book is going to be like year 11 next year, I believe. And, he wants to win a ring, and I don't blame him. Like, if you see a better opportunity, like, he might want to take it, and that could very well affect it. And I think what you get out of the deal also, factors into his decision, because for example, the Butler Kuminga deal that would have sent those two to Phoenix, that is a perfect deal where you stay competitive. At the same time, you're planning to have a short rebuild. So you're committing to Jimmy Butler for 2 years, kind of the same amount of time that you'd have Durant, but you're getting a future player in Kuminga along with more draft picks. And I apologize, I don't remember what else was a part of the deal, but that's just something that, like, you show to Devin Booker, like, you're committed to winning now and you're committed to winning later.
That's it. And I think that if you're Book, it's a challenging situation, right? You've been with Kevin Durant, for 2 gold medal runs in the Olympics. You've been for Kevin Durant these last couple of years in Phoenix, and Kevin Durant has said that he's wanted to be here long term. It's been a possibility that he's going to retire here. That's a big change in that sort of vision for Devin Booker, thinking that, okay, I'm going to be with Kevin Durant for the next 4, 5, 6 years of my career. And now, okay, we're going to be left with the team where it's me and Bradley Beal, and is he going to want that? Like, that's, and, I wouldn't say there's fire necessarily to these talks, but when Woj reported in the summer last year that the Houston Rockets really covet Devin Booker, they're going to make a big offer potentially. Like, that stuff seems like it's becoming a little more real, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. Well, the Rockets kind of changed course this year. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
they're dogs. They kind of remind me of the 2020 Suns a little bit.
Hmm.
Just like they're young, they're talented, they're well coached.
Yeah.
Well, with Ime Udoka, I mean, the Celtics just kind of let him go, which I have my opinions on. But
Right.
so I just going back to Book. It's going to be interesting what we see in the next. I think the next year is going to really tell us what he wants in his career. Does he want to go play in a big city like New York or maybe like LA once James Harden and Kawhi kind of like wander off there? Maybe he wants to be the guy in a big city. Maybe he wants to go play with somebody else. I mean, it's a players' league. It's
Right.
not. Well, last week told us differently that maybe it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a players' league with the Luka trade, but they have a lot of control. They have a lot of control what they want, and we'll see what he decides.
I thought it was really interesting. Matt Ishbia put out a social media post once Book became the all-time leading scorer, and I haven't gotten to see Book in person since then. So I'll throw out on the podcast. Congratulations, Devin Booker, all-time leading scorer. Really big
Yes.
accomplishment. Matt
Huge.
Ishbia said in the tweet, "So proud of all your successes on and off the court in Phoenix, and excited to continue to do amazing things here for years to come." And I tweeted at that, and I'm like, okay, that sounds intentional, amid all the uncertainty. So we'll see how it goes. With that, James Jones addressed the media, and I know you weren't there. I was, and in the press conference, I was there for Bright Side of the Sun, and the tone of it was really, I don't know, maybe not the tone, but what I took away from it. It seemed like it was an underwhelming sort of interview, and the reason why is because, well, now you look at the record. This is a below 500 team with a $400 million payroll in everything that it's doing, and that's a record in NBA history. And all the investments are just it's not working. And when James Jones was asked about the Suns and underperforming, he mentioned injuries, and I think we can agree that a lot of injuries have played a big role in this team's success and not being able to be together for a consistent string of games. More often than not, they're not together for a consistent string of games. And he addressed the Kevin Durant rumors, and it's like what we've said, where if you're in Kevin's situation, you got to be a pro, you got to go out and play, you're under contract. But at the same time, you're Kevin Durant. He's expressed no desire to leave, and it seems like they went behind his back. I think James Jones in the past has been that way, and it just didn't seem like there was enough accountability on the front office's part. And it's not even James, really. It's Matt and Josh Bartelstein. Probably should have addressed the media, probably who we need to hear from. But with that being said, Brad, James Jones has been an architect of these last couple of years where the Suns have put together some really good teams. In the same breath, they're not where they're supposed to be right now. Do you think that James Jones is on the hot seat, even though he might not be the one who's making these decisions?
I think he could be on the hot seat just because there might need to be like a change in face. But if he was to lose his job, I think it's 100% not deserved at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I say that because I forget when he became the GM, probably around 2018-ish. But he drafted McHale,
Mm-hmm.
and he drafted Cam Johnson. Everybody, I remember the Kobe White video after the draft, and Kobe's just sitting there like, Cam went 10th. Cam went 10th. What? Wow. And look at what Cam Johnson has turned into. Now he gets a very high contract with when he signed with the Nets, very deservedly so. The Suns were gonna owe him that if he still is on the team, and he earned it. And it's not necessarily what I like about James Jones is he doesn't draft on potential. That's what kills a lot of teams is they draft a player based off potential who could be a primary ball handler and could be the guy. James was one of the very first GMs of this era of team ball that kind of understood it and how he built the 2020-2021 Phoenix Suns. You have a great point guard that can distribute, and you have a primary scorer in Devin Booker. Then you have two awesome role players in Cam Johnson, like six-man Cam Johnson at the time, and Mikal Bridges. And then you have a guy who's been there to the finals in Jay Crowder. And then you have a young rising center in DeAndre Ayton, former number 1 overall pick. I mean, that's a great recipe for success. And he built that team through 2020, 2021, 22, and even part of 23 in the playoff run. So I don't think it's deserved. I mean, look at the cards he's been dealt. 3 max players. He's in the second apron. Who are you going to get? Like, I thought this team was better than last year's team going into this season. And in the first part of the season, I was like, wow, this team is better because they started 8-1 against good teams. Like, they beat good teams in close games. Like, I think one of their first games was against the Mavericks, where back when they had Luka, they played them well in Dallas. And I can't remember some of the other games that they played in the beginning, but I just remember it was like they were chippy, they were fighting close games. Everybody was healthy, and then KD gets hurt in like the 9th game of the season, something like that. And then it kind of just goes downhill from there. And now they're below 500. So I don't think it is his fault. And if he does get axed, it's not deserving at all.
Yeah. I think you said all the right things there. Let's move on, since I think that's a good place to stop for the James Jones thing. Post All-Star break, we got a team that's 26-28. Obviously, the expectations are much different. We're going to go ahead and give grades for Coach Mike Budenholzer and the main rotation players for this team. So we'll both do it. I'll start. So for Coach Mike Budenholzer, I'm going to give him an F. I really think that coming in, this team needed to shoot. For him coming in, this team last year needed to shoot more threes. They did it early on. It's trailed off since then. It's up and down, really. And I think we've seen in games like the Warriors game lately, for example, a couple games before that, when KD got up 7-8 threes, dangerous part of the offense when you can rely on that and rely on the ball movement. And even though there's been injuries this year, I think one of the bigger decisions that he's made is taking the ball out of Tyus Jones's hands, putting it in Devin Booker's hands lately. And now we have an ineffective Tyus Jones out there in the court who is turning the ball over more than this is a guy who had top assist to turnover ratio in each of the last 6 years. And now I think he had like 6 the other night against Houston, or one of the games. So managing this team and getting it to play, or finding a way to make it consistent, has been lackadaisical. And I think the reason I give F is because you hired Coach Bud to be better than Frank Vogel, and they're not even going to approach that record with the 49-33 from last year. So I'm going to be a little hard on Coach Bud. I think I expected this team to do more. I think I expected another reason too is the relationship with Nurkic and the news that's coming out there that I haven't talked to the coach in 2 months. Like, I don't think that coach-player relationship can happen, especially in Phoenix, for a team that is wanting to win a championship. I think if it weren't for that, I would give Bud around the B or C range because of the injuries, but that's where I'll leave it at that. That he hasn't been able to manage this team very well.
Yeah, I think you make very great points there, Trevor. Especially the Nurk relationship. I'm kind of hearing that for, you're jogging my memory. I have a little recency bias, and just kind of thinking back that That puts my grade at a D. I wouldn't give him an F only because of their start to the year. Like, we've seen what he can do. We've seen how he can keep people accountable. I mean, he was keeping players accountable. And Kevin Durant is somebody that does need to be held accountable. We can't have a coach who's afraid to get up in Durant's face, because everybody makes mistakes. And the biggest flaw in Durant's game is turnovers. It's a fact. It's numbers. And again, it goes back to something that he's being called to do something that he never has done, and that's kind of being a facilitator.
Yeah.
So I would give that a D, just because of everything you said. Not going to go to reiterate everything, but the only thing that puts me a letter grade above an F is the fact that they started 8-1. So, and the rotations. I don't think you mentioned the rotations.
Yeah.
Lately, the rotations have been god awful.
Yeah. It's like what happened to Ryan Dunn,
No, he was starting
at
the 3 in the beginning of the year, and he was playing great defense, average offense, but he's a rookie, he's going to grow into that. And, the game's much more quick than college. So it's just, you can't, in the middle of the season, going into the All-Star break, you can't be looking for rotation players. You just can't. You need to have your solid set 8. And Ryan Dunn has proven that he can be a top 8 player. And I think he's proven that he could start too. I actually liked the move to put Beal on the bench, and come off as like a 6th man.
Yeah.
So the Ryan Dunn thing just baffles me.
Yeah. Yeah. Rotation's a good point there. Okay. We're going to go to the players now. Kevin Durant, if you want to start with KD, and then I'll bounce back off you.
A B, only because he's led the team in scoring. He's just a hooper. He's just a hooper. That he's a guy you always want to have on your team, and he has been one of the best defenders on this team. At the same time of being one of the best offensive players, or being the best offensive player, not one of. And this is one of the first years where I've seen KD actually, one of the criticisms in the past has been that KD's not a leader. But I've seen Durant, keep people accountable more this year. And he's actually he's talking to people on the court, and we see it. And I love that side of him. So, I give him a B.
I'm going to go B as well. And with that being said, I know there's going to be some Suns fans. They're like, oh, you guys are going to hate KD, blah, blah, blah. He's been so good. So I will say this. Kevin Durant's been amazing this year. Whenever I go, Brad, down my timeline, there's B-ball index stats, bunch of different pages like that show field goal percentage in the final 4 seconds of the shot clock, field goal percentage on isolations. And I always see Kevin Durant's name at 1 or 2. Everything he has done on the court has been magnificent. I think the only reason that I wouldn't give him an A is because the Suns are 26-28 at this point in the season. And for a Kevin Durant led team, and this is an expectation that me and I think a lot of people would put on a Kevin Durant level player, you would think that Kevin Durant team would be above 500, even given everything with the Suns 5 or 6 games. And I think if Kevin Durant weren't injured, they very well would be that. But at the same time, Kevin Durant is deserving of all the praise he's gotten. He's a top 10 player, in my opinion. I have him at 8 all time. That's a story for another day.
I agree with you, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. So we got that one. I know sometimes we go back and forth, but I've changed a little lately. So
yeah,
we talked about it over the phone. So we'll do that.
One thing real quick before we move on that I want to say that a comparison to Kevin Durant is those who watch football, he's almost exactly like Joe Burrow in the sense of Joe Burrow led a team to I think it was 9-8 this year, barely above 500. They they started off pretty bad, and they climbed their way back up. But the reason why the Bengals lost isn't because of Joe Burrow's play in quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, even the beginning of the first half of quarter four. It's the last part of the game. It just kind of takes a little dip. So just kind of like think about that comparison. Like Joe Burrow, Kevin Durant, both dogs. But that's the one thing that's kind of held the Suns back a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think around the edges, right? Like the roster needs some work. Since Nick Richards has come, that's really opened up things. But pre Nick Richards, figuring it out and trying to just piece things together, I think like it's a darn near perfect expectation for him. But I think like at a B with where the Suns are at record wise, that's why I feel it's fair. So from there, we'll move into Devin Booker. I'm gonna give Book an A, and the reason being is I don't think that he's underperforming relative to his expectations. I actually think being top 11 and top 10 in scoring is something that's really, really good, really magnificent to achieve. And I think that he's been the healthiest. Well, he's been the healthiest Sun relatively, right? Or at least of the big three.
So the big three, yeah.
And I think the January stretch he had was really, really good. Now, that's not to say that he's having a better season than Kevin Durant. I just think that relevant to Book's expectations, he's been healthy. He's taken more threes. He's making the right plays on the court. I think that everything that you would ask of him, he's done. Now, let me say that because I gave Durant a B, Book needs to be held more accountable, somewhat accountable for the team's record and where everything has gone. But I think the passing, the shooting, the scoring has been there, and he's made it clear that he's looking to take a back seat in the regular season when it comes to aggressiveness in order to make things happen in the playoffs. Now, will the Suns get there? I don't know. But I think everything that Book's been asked to do, outside of some games where he shot poorly, I think the basketball decisions have been good. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Trevor. I'd give him an A as well. And I'll just emphasize your points there. Like, he's just been doing great in his passing, his scoring, making the right decisions. And I think his decision-making has improved dramatically from last year, and the turnovers, although I don't have the numbers in front of me, the eye test that from what I've seen, they just definitely have gone down a lot more this season. So that's why I'd give him an A as well.
That's it. Bradley Beal. I'm going to give Bradley Beal a D. You got your best availability. Your best ability, is availability. And he just hasn't been on the floor long enough. It's now been 100, or I did a stat before the Rockets game. He's missed 46 out of a possible 136 games in these 2 years. It's not Bradley Beal's fault that he's injured. He's actually shooting really good from three. I think he's about 40% from three this year. I don't think that's been the problem, but and granted, he was in a tough situation with the trade talks and his kids. There was a heckler yelling at his wife and kids in a game, and that's a difficult situation. Talks potentially, like his agent has had to go to the media and have talks about Brad not wanting to waive his no trade clause, and he's in the news about that. That's all difficult stuff. And Jimmy Butler, I imagine that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, or at least Kevin Durant, wanted Jimmy Butler here. They would maybe extend together, and then this would be the new big three. Bradley Beal's had to deal with all that, but at the same time, you're paid. Just to be real about it, you're paid $50 million. You're expected to be a top three player on this team and a member of the big three. And too often on the bench, I've seen Brad sit behind, the main rotation guys, kind of have I'll be honest, a bad look on his face. And I think there's, it's understandable why, but at the same time, you're expected to be Bradley Beal, 3 years removed, maybe 4 years removed now from being a 30-plus point per game scorer. a facilitator, a defender to some extent, and he hasn't been the Bradley Beal that the Suns need. So I'm going to give Bradley Beal a D.
Gotcha. I give him an F, and I just think he's either really happy or he's really pouty.
Yeah.
And we saw that in Game 4 against the Timberwolves in the playoffs last year. I need that. You need that dog in a guy that is making $50 million a year, and you need to be available. Like I think 100% he can be sometimes like a top 2 player in this team. Just depends on the night and depends if he's healthy. But you got to be healthy, and you're a professional. You gotta figure it out. I mean, even if it's not your fault, I'm not like trying to be too hard, but like it's just reality.
Yeah.
It's black and white.
Yeah, and he's said a couple times, and it's been often, like many injuries where I've been at practices interviewing Bradley Beal, and he said, "Yeah, I'm a little hard-headed. I've got to learn to push back on these injuries." It's like, Brad, this team needs you. Like, you are a crucial part of this team. You're getting paid $50 million, and there's championship expectations, and with great expectations, comes some great criticism. So I can't fault you there for putting Brad in an F. Grayson Allen. What do you think about Grayson Allen?
I say a B,
Okay.
only because he was an A last year. Like, he was the most consistent player last year, and it's kind of waned off a little bit. Didn't look. He got bigger this year in weight, but that kind of took away from his quickness. And in the beginning of the season, he was struggling shooting. Now, obviously, it's gotten back. We saw the Utah game. Like, that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think it's dipped a little bit, but I still think this past maybe 3 months, he's been the most consistent Sun.
I like that too. I'm going to give Grayson a B also. Slow start to the year, but really picked it up lately. Became a good role player. Also a guy that some fans on the timeline, maybe some way off fans in terms of how they perceived it, were saying, trade Grayson, this is a tradable contract. I think, I think it's extremely valuable to have a shooter like that on the team. And he's had some really good, if they don't have him, they lose that Jazz game,
Yeah.
Every
game
game
5 or 6 in a row,
Yeah. Yeah. And like that, he's on fire, and to have that boost, that spark is so important. So I'm with Grayson and B as well. Tyus Jones. I'm going to give Tyus a C. I said at the beginning of the year in the 8-1 start, I think he was extremely positive. He wasn't turning the ball over very much. They had the ball in his hands. I think his play and his consistency was a reason why they started off 8-1. For whatever reason, and I think it's because Tyus is small. I'm definitely 2 or 3 inches taller than Tyus Jones, and I'm 6'2" without shoes. So, he can't play defense down the stretch. He's not a guy who can close games. I think that's the reason why the Suns put the ball in Devin Booker's hand and Tyus is off the ball, and you make him more of a shooter and kind of stretch player for the offense. And then on defense, you can kind of cover him a little bit. But and I think the turnovers lately have been really disappointing. He's the one player right now when I'm on Suns Twitter, which I'm on way more often than I should be, is someone that people are criticizing more often than not. And I think post All-Star break, it's possible to look at taking him out of the starting lineup, in my opinion. So Tyus a C.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a B, only because I don't think the turnovers are necessarily his fault. Okay. I think it's how he's being utilized. And my biggest criticism last year's team and everybody's criticism was they don't have a point guard. They don't have a point guard. They don't have a point guard. Okay, we get a point guard. And during that 8-1 start, he was phenomenal. It was like Durant and Booker were playing off the ball. They were getting the shots they wanted. And it was like clockwork. It was magic, Like he was that missing piece. Then for some reason, Coach Bud wants to change his role on the team. I haven't understood that. So that's why I give him a grade higher than you with a B. And why I don't give him an A is because his defense. He's just, it's like, putting me out there, in the last second of a game. Like, just when you're 6 foot, you're not going to be able to defend, 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" guys. They can shoot over you really easily. So yeah.
I think one thing that I'll add, and this is something maybe that's more positive on my assessment of Tyus Jones, like it's hard to get for me to say up here he's a C, given that the Suns signed him for the minimum. And I think even at this point of the year, there's been more highs for Tyus Jones than lows. So the B makes a lot of sense. I think my C comes with some weight because of the 8-1 start and because of how consistent he was. I felt that he was the best Sun in his role for the first 2 months of the season. And now he's getting played out of the rotation. So there's it's a little bit of disappointment from fans that you hope Tyus Jones would be able to finish and keep going a little longer. But with that, we move on. We got Bol, who he was not involved earlier in the year. Normally this would probably be the Nurkic spot, but Nurkic is no longer on the team. I got to give Bol an A. I mean, he's come in and had some really good games. I think, the rebounding, the shot blocking has been good. The 3-pointers, I think he's been loose, which, you weren't a part of this team before, and now you're loose and you're shooting threes, you're letting it fly. His IQ is not great. I think the Bol experience, like with every great play comes a dud, whether it be a turnover or something. And he didn't execute very well late in the Rockets game the other night. He had the ball for a floater, should have been, and then he tried to get it to KD. And I don't know if it turned into a shot clock violation or a turnover, but just having more confidence in your game and that part of the situation. But I think with that comes time on the court and knowing that you're a part of the rotation consistently. But I'll be very high on Bol. I'll give Bol a lot of credit. I'm a believer.
That's the first time I heard that, a believer. That's good. Yeah, I'm kind of stuck on this one. Don't hate me, Suns fans, but I give him a C.
Okay.
And there's a reason why he's just being put in the lineup right now, like, halfway through the season. So obviously there has to be something that we're not seeing, in practice, things like that. And secondly, I remember in the beginning of the year, he got some opportunities to play, and he just didn't fit in the beginning. Kind of turned the ball over a little too much. So, and then to his credit, he's played extremely well lately. Was loose, was having fun, was shooting threes, was just driving to the basket, scoring. So that's, kind of like, beginning of the season, like, and then the middle of the season, like A, and you put that all together, I give it a C.
Very fair. Royce O'Neal, what do you think about Royce's season? And this is the last one we'll do for the players. I didn't go over Dunn and Oso, but we're going to do something a little different for those guys since they're rookies. So for Royce, what would you give him?
I give him a B plus.
Okay.
Not just a B, because I can't give him an A just because of his availability issues this year. But he looks like more of a Phoenix Sun this year. Like he has that identity in the team. He's a pretty tough guy, and he's confident in his game. I don't remember seeing this year like any play where I'm just like, why would you do that? Like, what are you thinking? So I think he's been pretty consistent this year, especially with the 3-ball. Cut down on the turnovers. He's been a part, like, his identity is a Phoenix Sun. So I give him a B plus.
Very fair. I'm going to give Royce the same grade. I'll give him a B plus. Let's do B plus. Same reasons as you. Has had some really good games shooting the ball this year. Also had some games where he shot the Suns out of games, but I think overall he's a plus on the defensive end. Rebounding, he plays bigger than his height. He's listed at 6'6". I think he's probably about 6'3", 6'4", just given because I walk these, along these guys along the halls, and I'm like, you know what, I'm taller than this guy. And Royce and I are about the same height, and again, I'm 6'2" without shoes. So, Royce has done a lot of good things. They gave up a lot to get him to be a consistent role player on this team, but I think he's done everything he's needed to do. So I'll give Royce a B. Okay, and then this one, I don't think it's fair to put grades on Ryan and Oso, just because they're rookies and I think are getting more opportunities than they would on other championship contending teams. I think we would expect them to be in development, and it's like, okay, we would grade these guys based on their development, but to a large extent, minus Oso getting sent to the G League lately, they've been thrown in the fire. So what have been your thoughts overall on Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro? And if you want, you can give a grade. That's just why I'm not going to give a grade myself.
Yeah, I don't think they deserve to be graded just yet, like you said. Ryan, I love Ryan just because he's so confident. Just as a rookie, he's one of the most confident rookies I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And he knows his role as a Phoenix Sun. He knows that he's, a 3-point shooter. He's a perfect 3-and-D guy. Like, he's one of the best defenders on the team. And he embraces it. He embraces being a Sun. So, I was, again, very disappointed to see him barely get any minutes against the Grizzlies a couple nights ago. Don't know why that was, but okay. So then we got to Oso. I don't understand why he was sent to the G League. I really don't. I mean, if you're going to tell me that Nurkic didn't fit this offense, then why do you think that Plumlee fit this offense? Is my take. So, I think they're very similar players. Maybe Mason is more. I think Mason hustles more than Nurkic did. But I think Oso just, although he wasn't as good as a rim protector, he fought. He was a hustler. He fought, and he could shoot that mid range. With his little, one-handed push shot that he has. Like, it caught defenders off guard, and he just fit well. So I was very shocked to see that he got sent to the G League, and I didn't understand that. Like, why wouldn't you invest more in a rookie that's shown promise than a veteran center who, respectively, has, he's a veteran, but and Mason Plumlee, but heading towards the end of his career, and doesn't necessarily fit the Suns' offense as much as Oso does. Mm-hmm. So.
Good analysis. Ryan Dunn. I love watching Ryan Dunn. I think when he gets up and jams it on the fast break and looks to the fans and starts flexing, like, I love seeing that from a rookie, the energy. I think coming out of Virginia, the 3-point shot was a question. He's put in a lot of work. Brad, I think he's had some really good shooting games. He's had some off shooting games, but you can tell that it's a focus of his, and he's not letting it go by. I'm going to pause for a second here before I was about to get on a tangent. I'll tell you after the episode what I was about to say, but we're going to focus on Ryan Dunn. Ryan Dunn, compared to expectations, I think he's been above it more often than not. And to get starts this year and to get experience is really good for him. And what I don't understand is, if you're at this point in the season, I think you got to start looking beyond this year for the Suns. Yeah. And Ryan Dunn is a big part of that, you think, unless he's not, which that would be unfortunate because he's been really good, and I think the fans like him. I think he's done everything he's been asked to do, and he does it with intention. He does it with focus. And really impressive, because this question I asked at practice one time, and I think it was fair to ask. Maybe some people don't think so. I think it was fair to ask. I went up to Ryan and I asked him, do you think, given the minutes you've shown, this is like a month and a half into the season, that you deserve more time on the court? And he said, you gave a very good answer. That's something that Coach Bud controls. That's not up to me. I'm just going to keep focusing on what I can. And if you're a young player, he might throw it, yeah, and like I don't know what coach is doing, like just off the cuff. But very mature player. Really like Ryan Dunn. I think he would be an excellent Phoenix Sun if he stays here for the long term. Oso, same thing, second round pick. Maybe someone who wasn't expected to come in and provide some minutes like he did this year. I think had it not been for the Richards trade, I would have liked to seen Oso get more time and be in that starting role. And now, for whatever reason, he's not. Plumlee's more experienced. I imagine it's because he's a bigger body and can box out better. Boxing out's been a real struggle for Oso this year. He's just skinny.
The whole team, not just Oso, the whole team.
Yeah, the whole team. But for him, for sure, I think boxing out, rebounding is something that you'd like to have better. I still think Oso's skill set makes him a little bit more of a tweener, like a 3-4 type player where they need him to be a 5. So that's what I see from Oso. But again, very confident, very poised guy, very consistent in his approach. I think the Suns did a really good job with this draft. So I'll leave it at that for those two guys.
That's kind of circle back to James Jones. Do you fire him or not? Look at those two guys and their development.
Yeah.
Right. That Ryan Dunn pick, draft pick, is very similar to the Cam Johnson pick back in 2018.
Yeah. This is a big topic I talk about in the Suns spaces online. It's like, what if the Suns had Ryan Dunn and Tamani Kamara to play with this team? Like, given how good Tamani's been in Portland. Oh,
yeah, wow. That would have been good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up there. We hit everything that we want to do on the podcast today. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Brad, before we wrap up and we watch Ryan and KD in the All-Star weekend at Rising Stars and the All-Star game, respectively?
Yeah, no. I just want to say thank you to having me on like my first sports podcast. Been always watch sports shows, and this was a fun experience. So thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun to have you on, and we'll see how it goes with publishing. I'm kind of trying to figure out a content schedule and how it's going to look forward. But if the people like it, maybe we'll do it again. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So
yes, sir.
With that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks, guys, for coming to this Desert Sports and Entertainment podcast. For Brad and me, we'll see you next time.